We're just talking, obviously, about the elephant in the room, and that is the trade deadline. 10 days away. How do you see this playing out for the Maple Leafs?
Let me look. Let me think. Probably the same as the last 5 years. They're going to try to bring in two good players, and I think you just gotten to the point, and just talking with Jamie and Brian for a long time about this. They can go out and get a Braden Shen or a Scott Lawton or whoever you want it to be and add another defenseman. But I think it's just going to come down to whether the guys that have been there the longest, can there be a playoffs where, one of the Maple Leafs goes Braden Point or one of the Maple Leafs goes Kucherov? And we're talking about the obvious guys. Like, can Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews and William Nylander, can they be the guys that continually light the lamp? Because what have we talked about the last bunch of years? Mike Johnson always brings it up because we always start ranting and raving how, they're not tough enough. They're not cut out for this. And he says, you know what? They didn't score. They don't score come playoff time. So I think it's, they can go out and get whoever they want, but it's just going to come back to those guys that have been there the longest. And if they can break through and carry them along the way, that's what it's ultimately going to come down to.
And at the end of the day, that's how they built this team, right?
That's right.
Put all the eggs in that basket. Well, there you have. Those are the players that got to get it done. And I think that, that's what all the naysayers of Marner, it's not necessarily a personal attack on Marner. It's just the fact that if you extend him, then it's literally you have the exact same formula that you've had for the last how far do you want to go back? Same thing. And it's like kind of like people are saying the old saying, you do the same thing over and over again, the definition of insanity. Are you gonna commit to the same thing that you've seen for the last 8 years?
Rosie, people dub me some kind of Marner hater because I don't want his contract signed ASAP.
Yeah.
And I've said it a million times. It's not about Mitch Marner. It's about the same guys that don't win. Was the Vegas Golden Knights, or were the Vegas Golden Knights kind of aggressive and looked a little bit crazy at times for switching things up? Because they're not going to sit there and accept losing. So they change it up until they get the right recipe. Was it aggressive, and do I recommend that all the times? No, not exactly. But you got to commend them for saying, we've got to keep trying to find the right mix. We've got a solid base here. I just don't know why you would want to go. Like, I remember back in the day, and I give Shanny credit for showing faith in his guys. He said, it was after the second or third one. I can't even believe we can count years. He said, we like our players and we're going to keep our players. So he showed good faith and he liked his guys, and, maybe they can reward him and do something special. Excuse me. But to just lock up, like, we're talking about Austin Matthews possibly after this season being around for 3 more years. So you got 3 years and you can completely change the dynamic of the team. And it's not necessarily just about Mitch Marner or John Tavares. It's about having 3 or 4 guys making that much money. Like, we used to have the argument, I'm sure you guys did too. Can a team win with one guy making $10 million on the team? One guy. And the first team to do it, I think, was Vegas with Jack Eichel. So we haven't yet got to 2, let alone 3 or 4. So just the idea of having something different, like my dad always says, he's like, if those guys come off the books, I'm pretty sure you can sniff around and make some trades or free agency and bring in some pretty damn good hockey players for that amount of money. It doesn't have to be one guy just because he's a Toronto kid and he's Mitch Marner. I think everybody, like, if they fizzle out again, that's about enough, isn't it? Like, come on.
Well, the problem, that's what we've been saying all year, and we take heat for it because Mitch is a good player, and a lot of people's kids have his poster on the wall. Like, that's great. It's not.
He's a great guy too, Rosie. Like, his teammates love him. Everybody in Toronto loves him, but it's nothing against him. It's just the timing that his contract is the one that it's up. They locked in Nylander. They knocked in Matthews. I do not know what's going to happen with John Tavares. I would show no urgency to say we got to have you back too, because you can get different players. But it's not Mitch. It's nothing about Mitch. but it's the mix. It doesn't work. And I mean, it could work this year, but if it doesn't, there's no way in hell you could go back to the well.
And if Tree's talking to him saying, here's 13 million, and he's going, not a chance I'm doing 13, and the writing's on the wall, do you just like, it seems to me like the most likely scenario here, unless they like win a cup or at least go deep in the Eastern Conference Finals, like you just lose Mitch for nothing. He's going to go to free agency and away he goes. That's a tough pill to swallow. Although you open up that cap space with if you're a Tree and you know that team isn't signing what you're willing to give them, you just come up and say, listen, I'm unloading you. Can you like make it known that you're waiving your no trade and get everyone on board that could be interested in you, and you do everything you can to move him for something?
He ain't going anywhere. Like, what are you talking about? He's just gonna say, don't even think about moving me. I'm on board with that. When a player signs the old no movement, no trade, I think it's disrespectful even to ask, because it's like, that's the deal and you knew what it was. And they knew that. I think that if they went to him and said, hey, like, you're not signed, moving him is not even on the bingo card. It's not even an option. They're either going to try to win with him this year, let it play its course, and he's going to sign somewhere else in free agency. But guys, you saw with Rantanen, like, he was trying, like, if the agent and the player are trying to, if it's just going to be about the number that's filled out on the contract, like, I'm pretty sure that the Colorado Avalanche had a number in place where Mikko Rantanen could have played the next 8 years alongside Nathan McKinnon, who's one of the best players in the world. So you've got to think, if Rantanen loved Colorado, I'm sure there was a deal to be had there. If they didn't want to go the route of, I want to be the next one and I want 14 or I want this. So I'm sure the same thing would be available for Mitch. It's like, if you just want to say I want more than Austin Matthews and that's my number, then he's probably going to have to do that somewhere else. I don't know for sure, but there's probably a number there where it's like, you're born in Toronto, you get to play for the Leafs. Do you want to play for X? And if him and his agent are just like, no, it's got to be this, then it's probably going to be somewhere else.
Boys, the bigger thing for me is like Colorado, similar to player. He had a limited 12-team no trade. Mitch Marner, full autonomy to do whatever he wants. And that's the bigger thing for me is like Joe Sakic, Kyle Dubas, that conversation. But we're talking a lot about the four nations and trying to blend in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Do you think this could be used as sort of like a stepping stone for Marner and even Matthews, who I thought was really good in the Four Nations final?
You know what? It's a moment. And I think if you look at great players, we're talking about 4 series of, 4 men, 7 tops. And it's like, you got to do that over a 2-month span. And I think that's like we touched on it earlier. If you watch the performance of the guys on this team throughout the past years, it's always the Pasternak that scores in overtime, or the Matthew Tkachuk, or somebody else on the other team, like Cousins, or it hasn't been the Maple Leafs. So yeah, I think it's a great moment for Mitch Marner to prove to himself that come clutch time, he can set up the tying goal. He can set up the winning goal, possibly score the winning goal. So I mean, I think it would be crazy to just say he had that assist with Connor McDavid, and now all of a sudden he's going to be a playoff warrior. It just doesn't work like that. It's something that he could possibly draw off of and build on and be like, throw me out there. I want to make a difference, because we haven't really seen that in the past.
Mm-hmm. It is interesting. Moving, we were talking about between the pipes yesterday, kind of comparing like the Allmark Swayman deal and how they were handled and what we have now. It's pretty refreshing to be following the Maple Leafs and see what they have as far as goaltenders right now. Do you think, as we creep closer towards the playoffs, you got to start to lean towards a number one, or do you kind of like switch hitting them like they are right now?
I like the rotation right now, and we talked a lot about it with the Boston goaltender situation, where I was like, my big philosophy or my big hot take was, if you don't have, like, if you got 2 goaltenders, sometimes you don't have one. And I believe they tried to rotate in that one series where they went back to one guy and went to another. And it was like, but maybe that's how they're at their best, where they're just not carrying the mail and one guy isn't always in there. Like I said, do I think you can win a cup like that? I'm not sure. There's no scenario I can look back at and say, yeah, do what they did. It's always like one guy's in net and they're in there, and it's like, I just think of the alpha dog like a Vasilevsky or a Shesterkin, where that guy's in the net, or a Bobrovsky, and they're just there and they're awesome. They might have the odd moment where they kind of flare up, but for the most part, it's them. So I'm pretty sure down the stretch, they're both going to be looked at. And, there is that kind of trust factor with Wall. It's like, he seems like he plays well. He has those super games, and then all of a sudden they have to kind of just take him out. And like, I think they use the term, like, he's played some emotional games lately. And that kind of got my attention, where I'm like, okay, I understand that, but come playoff time, it's emotional from the drop of the puck right until the cup is handed out. So can the guy handle it? Like that's a massive question. So as of right now, it would kind of make me lean Stolars, but I think if Wall, like, if he can get into a rhythm and kind of start looking a little bit more grizzled and more like a veteran, and he can handle the workload, I love the idea of him being the guy come playoff time. Whether that happens or not, I'm not sure.
In support of Sick Kids, KPG sends a super chat here. Ask Dog if he thinks Leafs should go after Sam Bennett. What do you think of that?
I mean, that's not happening until the summertime. There's no way in hell that the Florida Panthers would do anything with Sam Bennett. He's one of those guys where if he leaves that roster, and it's so difficult to win, you see like Montour leaving Florida, and if Bennett leaves Florida, like they got their cup, and then it's so tough to stay competitive afterwards because guys' contract. I love Sam Bennett. Like, I love how he plays. I love him in the NHL game, and I love him come playoff time. It's crazy to think where he was like this kind of smallish skill speed forward, and now he just seems like an absolute monster out there. It's crazy how he's kind of transitioned in his career.
Well, he's the one who couldn't do a chin-up, no?
Yeah, so much for chin-ups. I mean, I don't know. That's just one of those things, but he plays so big for a guy that's not that big. Like, he's the real deal out there. I can't speak highly enough about Sam Bennett.
Do you have a favorite trade deadline story,
I don't know. I mean, one of my favorites was Marty Brodeur asking me in warm-up if I was going on the bus with them back to New Jersey, and I thought to myself, oh my God, I hope not. Because I've heard horror stories about how Lou, like, sends private investigators to check up on guys' behavior and drinking beers and stuff. And I'm like, I don't need any of that. So that's kind of how I knew my time was up in Carolina, when Marty Brodeur is asking me if I'm coming on the bus with him to the airport.
Interesting. That's a tough combo, my man. Really, really appreciate your time today. Enjoy the next couple days leading up to the deadline. We'll talk soon, okay?
Okay, guys. Great
Thanks,
to see you both. Cheers.
Take care. Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.